The stars had watched empires rise and fall for billions of years. They had seen great civilizations turn to dust. They had witnessed the birth of species and their extinction. But the stars had never seen anything quite like what was about to happen. It began, as most terrible things do, with arrogance. The hegemony had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their empire spread across 400 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. They had built monuments that could be seen from space. They believed themselves to be the greatest civilization that had ever existed. And perhaps they were, for a time. High Archon Iran sat upon his throne on the capital world of Prime. The throne was made from the bones of conquered kings. The floor beneath it was paved with the precious metals of dead worlds. Everything about the chamber was designed to make visitors feel small and afraid. Iran was old, even by standards. His pale blue skin had darkened with age. His 4 eyes had grown cold and cruel over centuries of absolute power. He had personally ordered the deaths of millions. He slept well every night. On this particular day, he was in a good mood. The reports from the outer sectors had pleased him greatly. "Show me again," he commanded. The holographic display flickered to life before him. It showed a planet from orbit, a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. Cities sparkled along the coastlines. Ships moved in and out of orbital stations. The planet was called New Helsinki. It was a human colony world, home to 4,200,000 souls. The fleet appeared at the edge of the display. 40 warships, more than enough for what needed to be done. "They did not even try to fight," said Admiral Al, who stood beside the throne. "Their defense stations fired for perhaps 10 minutes, then there was nothing left to fire." The hologram showed the bombardment. Bright lances of energy fell from the ships like rain. They struck the cities first, then the smaller towns, then anywhere that showed signs of life. The oceans boiled. The atmosphere caught fire. The green continents turned black. It took 6 hours to kill 4,200,000 humans. Iran watched the recording 3 times. Each time he smiled a little wider. "Excellent," he said at last. "Broadcast this to every system in the galaxy. Let all species see what happens to those who encroach upon territory." "It will be done, High Archon." "And summon the human ambassador. I wish to see her face when she learns what we have done." The nobles gathered in the throne room laughed. They wore robes of silk and gold. They decorated themselves with jewels taken from conquered worlds. They had never known fear or hardship in their lives. They would learn both soon enough. Ambassador arrived 3 days later. She was a small woman by human standards, short dark hair, brown skin weathered by years of service on distant worlds. She walked with the careful steps of someone who had learned to move quietly through dangerous places. The guards led her through the great doors of the throne room. She counted the nobles as she walked, 47, all watching her with expressions of contempt and amusement. At the end of the long hall, the High Archon waited on his throne of bones. Had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had negotiated with pirates, warlords, and tyrants. She had talked her way out of prisons and into palaces. She knew how to read a room. This room told her that she was not going to leave alive. She accepted this knowledge and kept walking. "Human," said Iran. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Do you know why you have been summoned?" "I suspect you are about to tell me, High Archon." A murmur ran through the nobles. The human had not bowed, had not knelt, had not shown proper respect. This was either very brave or very stupid. Iran raised one long-fingered hand. The hologram of New Helsinki appeared once more. The bombardment played in horrible detail. "Your colony world," said the High Archon. "It no longer exists." Watched the recording. She saw the cities burn. She saw the oceans boil. She saw 4,200,000 of her people die in fire and screaming darkness. Her expression did not change. "I see," she said quietly. "You see," Oran leaned forward, "that is all you have to say." "What would you have me say, High Archon? That this is an act of war. You know that already, that humanity will respond. You are counting on it." The throne room fell silent. The nobles exchanged glances. This was not the response they had expected. Oran studied the human ambassador with new interest. "You are cleverer than most of your species, so you understand your situation. Good. That will make this easier." He gestured, and a servant brought forward a data tablet. The servant placed it in his hands. "These are our terms," said the High Archon. "Humanity will surrender all 17 of its colony worlds to the hegemony. Your species will submit to rule. Your people will provide workers for our mines and factories. And you will provide biological specimens for our research programs." "Specimens," said, "you mean slaves for experimentation." "I mean whatever I say I mean. You have 30 cycles to accept these terms. If you refuse, we will do to your remaining worlds what we did to New Helsinki. We will hunt your species to the last child. We will erase every trace of human existence from the galaxy." He smiled. It was a terrible thing to see. "Your species has existed for perhaps 300,000 years. The hegemony has existed for 12,000. We have destroyed civilizations older and greater than yours. You are nothing to us. Insects. Vermin. Accept our terms and some of you may live as servants, refuse, and you will die screaming like the colonists of New Helsinki." Looked down at the data tablet in her hands. The terms were even worse than the High Archon had described. The details of the research programs alone were enough to make her stomach turn. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, 17 years old, bright and curious and full of hope for the future. What kind of future would she have under rule? None at all. Had known this moment would come, not the specifics, but the shape of it. Humanity had always known that someday they would face an enemy who wanted them dead simply for existing. They had hoped it would not happen in their lifetime. Hope was not a strategy. "High Archon," said, her voice was steady, "may I speak freely?" Oran gestured magnanimously. "By all means, beg, plead, offer whatever pathetic bargain you think might move me. I find it amusing." Nodded slowly. She looked around the throne room one last time, at the nobles in their stolen silks, at the guards in their polished armor, at the throne of bones and the old monster who sat upon it. Then she dropped the data tablet on the floor. The crack of its breaking echoed through the sudden silence. "You have made a mistake," said. "I want you to understand that. When the history of this moment is written, I want it recorded that you were warned." "Warned?" Oran laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. "Warned by whom? By you, a representative of a species that cannot even defend a single colony world." "Yes," reached up and removed the diplomatic credentials from around her neck. The golden chain caught the light as she let it fall to the floor beside the broken tablet. "Warned by me, warned by humanity." She met the High Archon's gaze without flinching. "You think we are weak because we have been peaceful. You think we are prey because we have not shown our teeth. You think you can destroy us because you have destroyed others." She smiled. It was a cold thing, a terrible thing. The nobles closest to her stepped back without knowing why. "You want war, Oran." The High Archon's eyes narrowed at the use of his name without title. No one had spoken to him that way in centuries. "Then stand and watch your empire collapse in flames." For a moment no one moved. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then Oran began to laugh. The nobles joined him, their voices filling the throne room with mocking sound. "Guards," said the High Archon, still chuckling, "kill her." The soldiers moved forward. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, did not try to run. There was nowhere to run to. There was nothing left to do but die well. She thought of her daughter one last time. She thought of Earth. She thought of humanity, scattered across 17 worlds about to face the storm. Hold on, she thought, we are coming. The first shot struck her in the chest. The second and third followed quickly. She fell to the polished floor of the throne room, her blood spreading across the precious metals of dead worlds. The nobles applauded. "Dispose of the body," said Iran. He was already bored with the spectacle. "And send word to all human systems. They have 30 cycles to accept our terms. Then the extermination begins." He settled back on his throne of bones, satisfied with the day's work. The human ambassador had been entertaining in her way. Her defiance had been almost admirable, but defiance meant nothing without power to back it up. And humans had no power. Everyone knew that. The recording of execution was broadcast to every human world within the hour. It was meant to break their spirit, to show them the futility of resistance, to make them understand that submission was their only hope. On Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Cole watched the recording 17 times. He studied every detail: the throne room, the guards, the nobles, the arrogant monster who called himself High Archon. When he was finished, he turned to face the assembled officers of the United Earth Defense Fleet. "Ladies and," he said, "Ambassador has given us our orders." He pressed a button on the console before him. Across the solar system and beyond, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, lights began to flicker on. Engines that had waited years for this moment began to warm up. Weapons systems designed for a war everyone hoped would never come began their final checks. "We have been preparing for this day for 100 years. We have built ships. We have trained crews. We have developed weapons that the galaxy has never seen." The holographic display showed the human fleet, not the small patrol ships and cargo vessels the galaxy knew about. The real fleet: 200 dreadnoughts, 2,000 cruisers, tens of thousands of support vessels, more firepower than any single species had ever assembled. "They think we are vermin. They think we are insects. They think they can crush us without consequence." Admiral Cole's voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. "They are wrong." He looked at the frozen image of Ambassador, standing defiant before the throne of a tyrant. Ambassador warned them. Now we will show them what that warning meant. He gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. "All units, commence Operation Burning Sky. We are at war." Across human space, ships began to move. Crews reported to battle stations. Coordinates were locked in. Weapons were armed. The hegemony had wanted war. They were about to learn what that meant. Far away on Prime, High Archon Iran slept peacefully, dreaming of a galaxy without humans. He did not know that those dreams were already dying. He did not know that the empire his ancestors had built over 12,000 years had just begun its final chapter. He would learn soon enough. They all would. The galaxy had a saying about humans. They were traders. They were explorers. They were scientists and artists and dreamers. They were peaceful, perhaps to a fault. The galaxy was about to learn a new saying. Deep in the asteroid belt of a nameless system, a door that had been sealed for 50 years began to open. Behind it lay the shipyard designated Echo 7. It was one of 47 such facilities hidden throughout human space. Commander Sarah stood on the observation deck as the massive doors rolled back. Beyond them, floating in the darkness, were ships, dozens of them. Dreadnoughts and battle cruisers and carriers, all built in secret, all waiting for a day that everyone hoped would never come. That day had come. "All ships reporting ready for deployment," said her executive officer. "Crews are at battle stations. Weapons systems are online." Sarah nodded. She had spent 15 years of her life in this asteroid, training crews and maintaining ships that most of humanity did not know existed. Now all that work was about to be put to the test. "Signal the fleet," she said. "We move in 1 hour." Similar scenes were playing out across human space, in the ice moons of distant gas giants, in hollowed-out comets drifting at the edge of solar systems, in asteroid bases disguised as mining operations. The hidden fleet was waking up. On Earth, Admiral Cole reviewed the reports as they came in. The numbers were impressive: 217 dreadnoughts, 2,400 cruisers, more than enough firepower to challenge the hegemony. But firepower alone would not win this war. "Show me the target list," Cole said. The holographic display changed. It now showed the hegemony's vast territory. 400 systems connected by supply lines, communication relays, and fuel depots. "They have never fought a war on more than 2 fronts," said Admiral, who had transferred to the command ship for the operation. "They have never needed to. Their enemies have always been smaller, weaker, less organized." "And less angry," Cole added quietly. "Yes, sir, and less angry." Cole studied the map. They expected humanity to defend their remaining colonies. They expected desperate battles at colony worlds. They expected humans to fight and die protecting their homes while fleets picked them off one by one. Cole had different plans. "We will not defend," he said. "We will attack everywhere all at once." The officers in the room exchanged glances. It was an insane strategy. No species had ever attempted to wage war across so many systems simultaneously. The coordination required was beyond anything the galaxy had seen. But that was exactly why it would work. "They think in terms of fleets and territories," Cole continued. "They think about conquering systems one at a time. They do not understand what we are about to do to them." He highlighted 40 points on the map: supply depots, fuel stations, communication relays, the invisible infrastructure that held an empire together. "We are not going to fight their fleets. We are going to cut their supply lines. We are going to blind their communications. We are going to starve their ships of fuel. And we are going to do it so fast that they will not be able to respond." He turned to face his officers. "This is not a war of conquest. This is a war of destruction. We are not here to take their empire. We are here to burn it down." The orders went out. Across human space, ships began to move toward their targets. The largest coordinated military operation in galactic history was. They had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, 40 systems fell into chaos at the same moment. On the supply depot at Commander James Wright led his strike force out of faster-than-light travel and immediately opened fire. The depot was protected by a small fleet of patrol ships. They were not expecting an attack. They certainly were not expecting an attack by ships they did not recognize. The human dreadnought Unconquered fired its main weapons. Beams of focused energy cut through ships like knives through paper. The enemy vessels tried to return fire, but human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and far more heavily armed than anything they had expected. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the supply depot was a field of burning debris. 2 million tons of fuel and supplies meant for war fleets had been destroyed. Commander Wright did not celebrate. There was no time. His fleet was already moving to the next target. Across the hegemony, similar scenes played out. Communication relays went silent. Fuel stations exploded. Military bases found themselves under attack by enemies who appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. The High Command received the reports with growing disbelief. This was not how war was supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to be slow and predictable. They were supposed to mass their forces in defensive positions. They were supposed to be afraid. These humans were not afraid. They were hunting. On Prime, High Archon Oran summoned his admirals to the throne room. The mood was very different from the day Ambassador had been executed. No one was laughing now. "Explain this to me," Oran said. His voice was cold with anger. How has a species with 17 colony worlds destroyed 40 of our installations in a single day? The admirals looked at each other. None of them wanted to be the first to speak. "High Archon," said Admiral Al finally, "we are still gathering information. The attacks were coordinated across a vast distance. We do not understand how they achieved this level of timing." "You do not understand." Oran's 4 eyes narrowed. "That is your answer, you do not understand. The humans, they have more ships than we anticipated, many more. Our intelligence suggested they had perhaps 50 military vessels. We have now confirmed of at least 500. 500? Where did they get 500 warships?" "We do not know, High Archon. They appear to have been built in secret, in hidden locations we never detected." Oran rose from his throne. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had conquered and ruled through superior force and superior knowledge. They had always known more about their enemies than their enemies knew about them. Now they faced an enemy they did not understand, an enemy they had not taken seriously, an enemy they had pushed too far. "Find their fleet," Oran commanded. "Find it and destroy it. Use whatever resources are necessary." "It will be done, High Archon." But it would not be done. The human fleet did not stay still long enough to be found. They struck and vanished. They appeared in one system and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. They seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. And then the broadcasts began. Every ship, every station, every world. The same message appeared on every screen at the same moment. It showed ambassadors standing before the throne of the High Archon. It showed her final words, her defiance, her death. And then it showed what happened next. Human ships destroying a supply depot, a fuel station breaking apart under weapons fire, a communication relay being reduced to atoms. A single line of text appeared at the end. "She warned you." The message played on a loop. They could not stop it. Their communication networks had been compromised. The humans were not just attacking their infrastructure, they were attacking their minds. On a dozen worlds throughout the hegemony, other species watched the broadcasts with very different feelings. The who had been enslaved by the for 3,000 years. The who served as workers in shipyards. The who had once been the masters of information networks before the hegemony crushed their civilization. For the first time in generations, these species felt something they had almost forgotten. Hoping. If the humans could if they could make the masters bleed, perhaps freedom was not impossible after all. The seeds of rebellion began to grow. Admiral Cole watched the reports from his command ship, the UES Prometheus. The first phase of the operation had exceeded all expectations. The supply network was crippled. Their communications were in chaos. Their fleets were scattered and confused. But Cole knew the war was far from over. "They still have more ships than we do," he said to his officers. "They still have more resources, more territory, more everything. If this becomes a war of attrition, they will win." "Then we don't let it become a war of attrition," said Captain Maria Santos. "Exactly." Cole pulled up a new set of targets. "Phase 2 begins in 48 hours. We are going to hit their regional command centers, the places where their nobles coordinate the empire. We take those out, and their remaining forces won't know what to do." "Sir," said Commander Wright, who had returned from his successful strike mission, "they are going to figure out our strategy eventually. They're not stupid, just arrogant." "I'm counting on that arrogance," Cole replied. "They've spent 12,000 years believing they're the greatest civilization in the galaxy. That belief is baked into everything they do. Every decision they make assumes that they are superior and their enemies are inferior." He smiled grimly. "That's why they still don't understand what's happening. They keep expecting us to act like the species they've conquered before, defensive, cautious, afraid. They can't imagine an enemy that attacks first and asks questions never." The human fleet regrouped at a prearranged point in deep space. Ships that had been scattered across 40 systems came together in the darkness between stars. Crews shared stories of the battles they had fought. Engineers repaired damage. Pilots caught what sleep they could. They all knew this was just the beginning. In the medical bay of the Prometheus, Doctor prepared for a different kind of mission. She was not a soldier. She was an intelligence operative. Her job was not to destroy the military. Her job was to destroy the empire from within. The subjugated species are already restless, she told Admiral Cole. The broadcasts have had exactly the effect we hoped. The resistance cells are reporting increased activity. They are ready to sabotage the shipyards from inside. She smiled. They have been waiting for this moment for 500 years. Their information networks never really went away. They just went underground. They're ready to give us everything they know about fleet movements, base locations, and defensive systems. Cole nodded. Make contact. Coordinate with the resistance. When Phase 2 begins, I want the entire hegemony burning, not just from our attacks, from their own slaves rising up. It will be done, Admiral. The galaxy was watching now. Other species, other empires, other civilizations that had thought of humans as harmless traders and curious scientists. They saw the hegemony's reports of the attacks. They saw the chaos spreading through space. They saw the broadcasts of ambassadors' death and the destruction that followed. Some of them felt fear. If humans could do this to what might they do to others? Some of them felt satisfaction. They had been cruel neighbors for 12,000 years. It was good to see them bleed. And some of them felt something like respect. The humans had been underestimated. The humans had been dismissed. The humans had been pushed too far. And now the humans were pushing back. In his throne room on Prime, High Archon Oran received reports of new attacks. Phase 2 had begun. Human ships were striking at regional command centers. Noble estates were burning. The carefully organized hierarchy of the hegemony was breaking down. And worst of all, the slaves were beginning to revolt. This is impossible, Oran muttered. One species, one small, insignificant species. How are they doing this? No one had an answer for him. The High Archon looked at the map of his empire. For the first time in his long life, he saw it as it truly was. Not a mighty civilization, not an unbreakable power, just a collection of worlds held together by fear and force. And now a new fear had arrived. A greater force had awakened. The humans had come to burn his empire down. And they were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the first human ships emerged from their hidden bases. 6 months of fire and chaos and death. 6 months that had changed the galaxy forever. The hegemony had lost 60 systems. Not conquered, not occupied, destroyed. The humans did not want territory. They wanted power to end. So they burned military bases and command centers and noble estates. They left the common people alive but helpless. They turned a mighty empire into a scattered collection of frightened worlds. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and studied the latest reports. His fleet had taken losses. Good ships, good people. The faces of the dead haunted his dreams, but the mission was succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. "Sir," said Captain Santos, "we've received word from Doctor. The uprising has spread to 12 more worlds. They have sabotaged the shipyards and the intelligence network has given us the location of the reserve fleet." Cole nodded slowly. The rebellion was spreading faster than even he had hoped. Centuries of oppression had created a powder keg. The human attacks had lit the fuse. What about the reserve fleet? 300 ships hiding in the system. They're waiting for our main force to overextend. Then they plan to strike behind us and cut us off from our supply lines. A good strategy, Cole admitted, if we didn't know about it. He turned to his tactical officers. "We're going to, all ships, full strength. We end their reserve fleet and they will have nothing left to fight with. On Prime, High Archon Oran had not slept in 3 days. His 4 eyes were bloodshot. His hands trembled with a mixture of rage and exhaustion. The reports that crossed his desk grew worse with every hour. His empire was dying. How, he demanded of his remaining admirals. How is this happening? We have more ships. We have more resources. We have ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. Admiral Al stepped forward. He was the only senior commander who had survived the first 6 months of the war. The others had died when their command centers were destroyed or when their ships were ambushed. High Archon, the humans do not fight like any enemy we have faced before. Then explain how they fight, make me understand. Al gathered his thoughts. He had spent 6 months trying to understand human tactics. What he had learned frightened him more than any fleet. They do not care about territory. They do not care about glory. They do not care about honor or tradition or any of the things that guide warfare among civilized species. He paused. They only care about winning. They will use any tactic, any weapon, any strategy that gives them an advantage. They attack our supply lines instead of our fleets. They strike at our leadership instead of our soldiers. They turn our own slaves against us instead of facing us alone. Cowardice, Oran spat. They are cowards who will not face us in open battle. No, High Archon, they are predators. They have studied us. They know our weaknesses. They know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage, and they do not stop, ever. We have destroyed many of their ships. We have killed many of their soldiers, but more always come. They adapt. They learn. They get better. The throne room was silent. The nobles who had once laughed at Ambassador's defiance were not laughing now. Many of their estates had been reduced to rubble. Many of their families had been forced to flee. There is something else, Al continued, something that disturbs me greatly. What? Their soldiers. I have reviewed recordings of ground engagements. Human soldiers fight in conditions that should kill them. They endure injuries that should be fatal. They continue fighting when all hope is lost. When their ships are crippled, they do not surrender. They turn their vessels into weapons and crash them into our stations. He looked directly at the High Archon. They are not afraid to die. I do not think they were ever afraid of us. I think they were waiting for us, preparing for us. They knew this day would come. Oran slammed his fist on the arm of his throne. Then we will make them afraid. We will destroy we will exterminate their species down to the last child. High Archon, our fleet cannot reach there. The humans have fortified every approach. Our supply lines are broken. Our communications are unreliable. Many of our ships cannot even leave their systems because they have no fuel. Then what do you suggest? Al took a deep breath. Surrender, offer terms, perhaps we can negotiate. He did not finish the sentence. Oran moved faster than anyone expected. The High Archon's ceremonial blade, kept at his side for 10 centuries, flashed through the air. Admiral Al's head rolled across the floor. Does anyone else wish to suggest surrender? Oran asked quietly. No one spoke. Good, activate the reserve fleet send every ship we have. We will crush the human fleet in one decisive battle. That is how the hegemony has always won its wars. That is how we will win this one. The orders went out, the trap was set. But the humans already knew about it. Doctor had spent 6 months building the most effective intelligence network the galaxy had ever seen. They had given her access to communication systems the thought were secure. They had agents in every noble household. They reported every ship movement from the shipyards where they worked. When the fleet gathered knew about it within hours. When they set their trap, she knew every detail. When Admiral Cole led his fleet into the system, he knew exactly what was waiting for him. And he was not worried. The battle began at dawn on the system's 3rd planet. 300 ships faced 200 human vessels. The commander, Admiral Hen, believed he had the advantage. He was wrong. All ships Formation Alpha, Cole ordered. Target their command ships first. Take out their leadership and the rest will fall into confusion. The human fleet accelerated. They expected them to approach cautiously, probing for weaknesses. Instead, the humans charged directly into the center of the enemy formation. "What are they doing?" Hen demanded. "They're outnumbered. This is suicide." It was not suicide. It was a tactic no commander had ever seen. The human ships were not trying to win through superior firepower. They were trying to win through superior coordination. Each vessel knew exactly where every other vessel would be at every moment. They moved like a single organism, supporting each other, covering each other, striking together. The Prometheus led the charge. Admiral Cole had refused suggestions that he command from the rear. If his people were going to die, he would die with them. The dreadnought's main weapons fired. A command ship exploded, then another, then another. The human fleet carved through the center of the enemy formation like a knife through flesh. "They're targeting our commanders," Hen realized too late. "Protect the command ships, all vessels." His order was cut short. A human cruiser, already crippled and burning, turned directly toward his flagship. The point defense weapons fired desperately, but the cruiser kept coming. "They're going to ram us. Evasive action." The flagship was too large to move quickly. The human cruiser struck its port side and detonated. The explosion ripped through 6 decks. Admiral Hen died without ever understanding what had happened. With their leadership destroyed, the fleet fell into chaos. Ships that had been coordinated moments before began acting independently. Some tried to fight. Some tried to flee. Some simply stopped, their crews unsure what to do. The human fleet showed no mercy. By the time the battle ended, 240 ships had been destroyed. The remaining 60 had surrendered or fled. The reserve fleet that was supposed to turn the tide of the war no longer existed. Cole surveyed the aftermath from the bridge of the Prometheus. His ship had taken heavy damage. Nearly 1,000 of his people had died in the battle, but they had won. A communication came through. One of the surrendered captains was requesting to speak with the human commander. Cole accepted the call. The captain appeared on screen. He was young for a ship commander. His uniform was torn and bloodied. Behind him, his bridge was in ruins. "Human Admiral," the captain said, "my ship is disabled. My crew is wounded. We surrender and request medical assistance according to the conventions of war." Cole studied the young captain for a long moment. "The conventions of war," he repeated. "Did you follow the conventions of war at New Helsinki? Did you offer medical assistance to the 4 million civilians your fleet murdered?" The captain's face went pale. I was not there. My ship was not part of that operation." "No, but you serve the hegemony that ordered it. You wear the uniform of the empire that celebrated it." Cole leaned forward. "I'm going to tell you something, Captain. I'm going to tell you so you can pass it along to whatever is left of your people when this is over. The conventions of war apply to enemies who follow them. Your High Archon chose to make this a war of extermination. He murdered civilians. He executed a diplomatic ambassador. He promised to hunt humanity to the last child." Cole's voice was quiet and cold. "New Helsinki didn't get to surrender." The captain opened his mouth to reply. Before he could speak, the Prometheus's weapons fired. The disabled enemy ship vanished in a flash of light. "Admiral," Captain Santos said carefully, "that was a surrendered vessel." "Yes," Cole replied. "Log it. Let the record show exactly what happened and why, and send a message to every ship in the galaxy." "What message, sir?" "Tell them that the human fleet does not accept surrenders from ships of the line. Tell them that if they want mercy, they should mutiny against their officers and turn themselves over to the nearest resistance force. Tell them that as long as High Archon Oran lives, As long as the hegemony exists as an institution, we will show them exactly as much mercy as they showed New Helsinki. The message went out. Across the hegemony, crews heard the words of the human admiral. Some were outraged, some were frightened, and some quietly began to wonder if their loyalty to the empire was worth dying for. The rebellion spread faster after. The rose up on 20 more worlds. The sabotaged entire fleets. The provided coordinates for every remaining military installation. On distant worlds, other species watched the collapse of the hegemony with growing amazement. For 12,000 years, the had seemed invincible. Now they were being taken apart piece by a species they had dismissed as vermin. The galaxy was learning a new truth about humanity. They were not just traders and explorers and dreamers. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. They had clawed their way up from nothing on a hostile world. They had faced extinction many times and always pulled through. They had learned, over hundreds of thousands of years, that the universe did not care about fairness or justice or mercy. So they had learned to make their own. On Prime, High Archon Oran received the news in silence. His last major fleet was gone. His empire was crumbling. His slaves were rising against him. The enemy he had dismissed as insects was at his door. "They will come here next," one of his advisors said. "The humans will come for Prime." Oran looked out at the city that spread below his palace. Millions of his people lived there, worked there, raised their families there. If the humans came with the same fury they had shown everywhere else. "Then we will meet them," he said. "We will gather every ship we have left, every soldier, every weapon. We will make them pay for every step they take toward our world." He turned away from the window. "If the hegemony is to fall, it will fall fighting. We will not surrender. We will not beg. We will show these humans that even in defeat, they are greater than they will ever be." It was a brave speech. It was even a noble speech. But bravery and nobility had not stopped the human fleet at. They would not stop it now. The end was coming. Everyone could feel it. The final battle for the heart of the hegemony was approaching. And the humans were not interested in a fair fight. They were interested in winning. The human fleet gathered at the edge of the system. 200 ships that had survived the long campaign. Behind them, across dozens of systems, the remnants of the hegemony burned and crumbled. Ahead of them lay the heart of the enemy empire. Admiral Cole looked at the tactical display. They had assembled everything they had left around there. 3,000 ships, orbital defense platforms, planetary shields that could withstand bombardment for months, a defensive position that had never been broken in 12,000 years. "They're dug in deep," Captain Santos observed. "Attacking that position head-on would cost us the entire fleet." "Yes," Cole agreed, "it would." The officers on the bridge waited for him to continue. They had learned to trust their admiral over the past months. They had followed him into battles that seemed impossible and emerged victorious. But this seemed different. This seemed like suicide. "Fortunately," Cole said, "we are not going to attack that position head-on." He brought up a new display. It showed not the fleet or the planet but the star at the center of the system. A yellow sun, slightly larger than Earth's, the source of light and warmth for the hegemonies. "During the first years of the war, while we were still preparing, our scientists developed something. We call it a stellar destabilization device. It works by creating a chain reaction in the star's core. The reaction builds over approximately 72 hours. Then the star goes nova." The bridge fell absolutely silent. "We have deployed these devices in exactly 2 systems throughout human history. Both were uninhabited. Both were destroyed completely in the testing process." Cole turned to face his officers. "We never intended to use this weapon on an inhabited world. We hoped we would never have to. But when the murdered 4 million of our people and promised to exterminate our species, hope stopped being a factor." Commander Wright spoke up. Sir, a nova would destroy everything in the system, not just the military, not just the government. Millions of civilians, children, people who had nothing to do with the war. Yes, Cole said simply, it would. That's genocide. No, Cole's voice was hard. Genocide is what they did to New Helsinki, what they promised to do to every human world, what they have done to dozens of species over 12,000 years. He pulled up images on the display, mass graves on conquered worlds, slave markets where children were sold, research facilities where prisoners were experimented on. The hegemony has committed genocide 100 times over. They have never faced consequences because no one was strong enough to stop them. We are strong enough, and we are going to stop them. But the civilians will be given a chance to leave. Cole's expression softened slightly. I am not a monster, Commander. Neither is humanity. We will deploy the device. We will broadcast our intentions to the planet. We will give every civilian 72 hours to evacuate. We will even escort their refugee ships to safety. And if they don't evacuate, then they will have made their choice, just as the High Archon made his choice when he ordered the attack on New Helsinki. The fleet moved into position. A small ship, specially designed for the purpose, broke away from the formation and headed toward the star. The stellar destabilization device was deployed. The countdown began. On Prime, the first warning came from the orbital defense stations. Their sensors detected unusual activity in the star, energy readings that did not make sense, fluctuations that should have been impossible. High Archon Iran received the report with confusion. What do you mean, the star is unstable? We don't understand it ourselves, High Archon. The humans have done something to our sun. We are detecting a chain reaction in the core. It is building slowly, but it will eventually. Eventually what? Nova High Archon, our sun is going to explode. Iran's 4 eyes widened. That's impossible. No species has the technology to destabilize a star. The humans do, apparently. Before the High Archon could respond, every communication screen in the palace lit up. The same thing was happening across the planet. In homes and offices, in military bases and government buildings, the face of Admiral Cole appeared. People of Prime, my name is Admiral Cole of the United Earth Defense Fleet. 8 months ago, your government murdered 4 million innocent civilians on the colony world of New Helsinki. Your High Archon promised to exterminate my species. Your ambassador was executed when she tried to warn him of the consequences. Cole's voice was calm and measured. The consequences have arrived. In 72 hours, your sun will go nova. Your planet will be destroyed. Your military, your government, your High Archon, all of it will end. Across the planet, millions have listened in stunned silence. But this is not about vengeance against your people. Your leaders chose this war. Many of you did not, so I am offering you a choice. The display changed to show evacuation routes. Civilian vessels will be allowed to leave the system without interference. Human ships will escort you to safety. You will be taken to neutral territory where you can start new lives. Your children will have a future. The display changed again. Now it showed the hegemony's military fleet still gathered in defensive formation around the planet. Military vessels and government officials will not be permitted to leave. The architects of genocide do not deserve escape. But civilians, families, ordinary people, you are not our enemy. You never were. Cole's face returned to the screen. You have 72 hours. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. Chaos erupted across the planet. In the throne room, High Archon Iran screamed orders at his remaining advisors. This is a bluff, a trick. They cannot possibly have the technology to destroy a star. High Archon, our scientists have analyzed the readings. The reaction is real. The star will go nova in approximately 70 hours now. Then stop it, send ships to the star, destroy whatever device they have planted. We cannot, High Archon. The device is already too close to the core. Any ship that approaches will be destroyed by radiation and heat. Orion collapsed back onto his throne. For 12,000 years, they had been the masters of the galaxy. They had built an empire through conquest and terror. They had crushed every enemy that rose against them. Now an enemy had risen that could not be crushed, an enemy that had turned their own star into a weapon against them. We cannot evacuate, Orion said finally. If we flee, we admit defeat. The hegemony will be finished. High Archon, the hegemony is already finished. Whether we stay or go, our empire is over. Then we stay. Orion's voice hardened. We stay and we fight. We show the galaxy that they do not run from anyone, not even humans. But the civilians? The civilians will stay as well. If we evacuate them, we give the humans what they want. We let them claim mercy while they destroy our world. No, everyone stays, everyone fights. High Archon, you are condemning millions of innocent people to death. Orion turned his cold gaze on the advisor who had spoken. I am the High Archon. My word is law. Anyone who attempts to evacuate will be shot down by our defense fleet. Am I understood? No one dared to argue. But the people had heard the human broadcast. They had seen the evacuation routes. They knew they had 72 hours to live unless they left. The first civilian ships launched within hours. Families who had nothing to do with politics or war or genocide, loading whatever they could carry onto whatever vessels could fly. They headed for the evacuation corridors, hoping the humans had told the truth. They had. Human ships met the refugee vessels at the edge of the system. Instead of opening fire, they formed protective escorts. They guided the civilians toward neutral space, away from the dying star. Admiral, said Captain Santos, we're getting a lot more refugee ships than expected, and some of them are being fired on by the defense fleet. The High Archon has ordered that no one leaves. Cole closed his eyes for a moment. Even now, even at the end, the rulers would rather kill their own people than let them escape. All ships, new orders. Intercept any military vessel that fires on refugee ships. Protect the civilians. The human fleet moved to engage. What followed was not a battle so much as a rescue operation. Human ships placed themselves between fleeing refugees and the guns of their own military. They took fire meant for civilians. They destroyed any ship that continued shooting at the helpless. More and more fled. Some came in military vessels, crews who had against their officers. Some came in cargo ships, transports, even personal yachts. Anything that could reach space and get out of the system. The human fleet saved thousands of lives that day. Lives, the lives of an enemy species. The galaxy watched in disbelief. 52 hours into the countdown, High Archon Orion finally understood that the humans had not been bluffing. The star was visibly unstable now. Massive solar flares erupted every few minutes. The temperature on Prime's surface was rising. The end was coming. Launch the fleet, he commanded. All ships. We will destroy the human forces and escape this system. High Archon, we are outnumbered in combat-ready vessels. Many of our crews have deserted. I don't care. Launch everything. We will not die cowering on the ground. The fleet launched. 1,500 ships, less than half of what they had started with. Many of them were undermanned. Many had crews who did not want to fight, but they followed orders because that was what military did. Admiral Cole watched them come. All ships battle formation, he ordered. This is the last fight, make it count. The two fleets met in the shadow of a dying star. The battle was fierce and brutal. Ships fought with the desperation of those who knew they were already dead. Human ships fought with the cold efficiency they had developed over months of war. The Prometheus led the human formation, as it always had. Its weapons carved through enemy vessels. Its shields absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser ships. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge and directed the battle with the precision of a surgeon. 6 hours later it was over. The fleet was destroyed. The few surviving ships scattered into the void, their crews choosing exile over death. On Prime, High Archon Iran watched the final moments of his fleet from the throne room. Around him, the nobles who had stayed loyal cowered and wept. The temperature outside was already lethal. The star was beginning its final collapse. "This is impossible," Iran whispered. "We are the hegemony. We have ruled for 12,000 years. We cannot end like this." But they could, and they did. The star went nova. Prime, the heart of an empire, the seat of power vanished in a wave of fire and radiation. The High Archon died, still refusing to believe that his empire could fall. The nobles died alongside him. The military commanders who had carried out genocide died in the flames they had brought upon themselves. The humans watched from a safe distance. There was no celebration, no cheering, just silence as a world died. Admiral Cole looked at the expanding shell of fire that had once been the sun. "It's done," he said quietly. "Send word to Earth. The hegemony is finished." Captain Santos stood beside him. "Sir, we killed a lot of people today, millions probably." "Yes, we did." "How do you live with that?" Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired, old. "I think about New Helsinki. I think about the 4,200,000 people who died there. I think about what would have happened to humanity if we had not stopped and I tell myself that this was necessary, that there was no other way." He turned away from the display. "Whether that's true or not, I'll have to figure out for the rest of my life. But the war is over, and humanity is still here. That has to count for something." The human fleet began the long journey home. Behind them, the hegemony existed only in memory. An empire that had lasted 12,000 years had been destroyed in less than one. The galaxy would never forget what had happened, what humans were capable of when pushed too far. Ambassador had warned them. Now everyone understood what that warning meant. 1 year had passed since the star of went nova. 1 year since the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known crumbled into dust and memory. 1 year that had changed everything. The hegemony was gone. Without their High Archon, without their ruling caste, the remaining systems fell into chaos. Regional governors who had once ruled in the name of the empire now fought each other for scraps of power. Some systems declared independence. Others were absorbed by neighboring civilizations. A few simply collapsed into anarchy. 12,000 years of history, erased in less than 12 months. In its place, something new was rising. The Galactic Council had existed for centuries, but it had always been dominated by the elder races, the powerful species who had built their civilizations over, species like who had used the Council to legitimize their conquests and maintain the status. Now the Council was meeting in special session. The topic was humanity. The question was simple: what kind of power were they and what did they want? Admiral Cole stood before the assembled representatives of 100 species. He wore his dress uniform, medals on his chest, gray hair cut short. He looked tired. He looked old. He looked like a man who had seen too much death. "Admiral Cole," said the council chairperson, a being from a species so ancient they had no name for themselves anymore. "You have been called before this body to account for your actions during the conflict with the hegemony. Do you understand the gravity of these proceedings?" "I do." "You are accused of destroying a populated world, of killing millions of sentient beings, of using weapons that no civilization should possess. How do you respond to these charges?" Cole looked around the council chamber. He saw fear in some faces, hatred in others, but also respect, curiosity, and something that might have been hope. "I respond by asking a question of my own. he said. Where was this council when they murdered 4 million human civilians on New Helsinki? Where were these charges when the hegemony promised to exterminate my entire species? Where was the gravity of proceedings when Ambassador was executed for daring to warn her killers of the consequences? The chamber fell silent. Humanity did not start this war. We did not want this war. For 100 years we tried to live peacefully among the stars. We traded. We explored. We built friendships with species who would accept us. We asked for nothing except the right to exist. Cole's voice hardened. They decided we did not have that right. They decided to murder us, all of us, every man, woman, and child of our species. They gave us 30 days to surrender to slavery or face extinction. He paused. So we gave them extinction instead. A murmur ran through the council. Some representatives nodded, others looked uncomfortable. A few openly glared at the human admiral. You ask if we feel remorse, Cole continued. I will tell you the truth. I think about the civilians who died every day. I think about the children who never had a chance to grow up. I think about the families who were torn apart. Yes, I feel remorse. I feel it like a weight on my soul that will never lift. His expression changed, became harder. But I also think about New Helsinki. I think about 4,200,000 of my people who were murdered without warning. I think about the species the hegemony destroyed over 12,000 years, the civilizations they erased, the billions they enslaved and experimented on and killed. He looked directly at the council chairperson. They had 12,000 years to choose peace. They chose conquest. They chose slavery. They chose genocide. When we gave them a final chance to face consequences for their actions, they chose to murder their own fleeing civilians rather than let them escape. Cole shook his head slowly. Do not lecture humanity about remorse. We did what we had to do to survive. We gave mercy to those who deserved it. We destroyed those who had proved over that they would never stop killing. And if another species threatens humanity, the chairperson asked, will you destroy them as well? I hope we never have to find out. Cole's voice was quiet but firm. Humanity does not want war. We never did. We want to build, to explore, to create, to make friends across the stars. That is who we are. He straightened. But we are also very, very good at war. We have proven that. So I will make this promise to the Council and through you to every species in the galaxy. Leave us in peace, and we will be the best friends you have ever had. Threaten our existence, and you will learn what they learned. He turned to leave, then stopped. Ambassador warned them. I hope no one else needs the same warning. The Council debated for 3 days. In the end, they made no official condemnation of humanity's actions. The evidence of atrocities was too overwhelming. The testimony of freed slaves too damning. The simple fact that humanity had done what the galaxy could not, ended a 12,000-year tyranny, counted for something. But beyond the council chambers, the effects of the war spread in ways no one expected. The species that had been enslaved by the hegemony came together. The who had suffered 3,000 years of bondage. The who had built ships for their masters for generations. The whose information networks had survived 5 centuries of oppression. And others, dozens of others, species whose names the galaxy had forgotten. They formed something new. They called it the Liberty Compact. Humanity was invited to join as a founding member. We do not understand your species, said Elder N at the signing ceremony. You destroyed the greatest empire in the galaxy. You killed millions, and then you saved millions more. You escorted our enemies' refugees to safety. You fed their children. The hegemony was our enemy, said Earth's new ambassador, a man named David. The people were not. Their leaders chose war. Their civilians did not. We know the difference. This is a strange way of thinking, N admitted. But perhaps it is a better way. Perhaps this is why you won. The Liberty Compact grew quickly. Species that had been oppressed for centuries found common cause. They shared resources, technology, and support. They helped each other rebuild. And at the center of it all, humanity served as both protector and partner. Not conquerors, not masters, partners. Earth's government issued a formal statement to all spacefaring civilizations. It was broadcast across the galaxy, translated into 1,000 languages, carved into monuments on 100 worlds. Humanity seeks peace. We build, we create, we explore. We do not wish for war, but we are very, very good at it. Consider carefully before you test us. Our hand is extended in friendship. We hope you will take it, but if you reach for a weapon instead, do not be surprised when we strike first and strike hard. We have learned that the universe does not reward mercy to those who intend only cruelty. We will not make that mistake. The galaxy listened, and for the first time in a very long time, the elder races treated humanity as equals. Not because they liked humans. Some of them hated and feared humanity more than ever, but because they respected what humanity had proven capable of. And respect, as Admiral Cole had learned, was sometimes more valuable than friendship. 1 year to the day after the destruction of New Helsinki, Admiral Cole made a private journey. He traveled alone, in a small ship, to the dead world where 4,200,000 of his people had died. The planet was still there. The bombardment had killed everyone on the surface, but it had not destroyed the world itself. It hung in space, black and lifeless, a monument to cruelty and loss. A memorial had been built on the surface, a wall of black obsidian stretching for miles, containing the name of every person who had died. It had taken months to verify the records, to make sure no one was forgotten. Cole walked along the wall. He had been here before during construction, but this was his first visit since it was completed. The names seemed endless. Families, children, old people and young people, scientists and workers and artists, ordinary people who had been living ordinary lives until fire fell from the sky. Near the beginning of the wall, in a place of honor, he found the name he was looking for. Ambassador, died in service to humanity. Cole had brought a flower from Earth, a simple white rose. He placed it at the base of the wall beneath her name. "You warned them," he said quietly. "They didn't listen. They never listen, do they? The powerful, the arrogant, the ones who think they can crush anyone who stands in their way. They never listen until it's too late." He stood in silence for a long moment. "I hope you would be proud of what we did. I hope you would understand why we had to do it. We tried to save as many civilians as we could. We tried to be better than them, even while we destroyed them. I don't know if we succeeded." The wind blew across the dead planet. It carried no sound except the distant hum of the memorial's power systems. "I'm retiring next month. I've done enough fighting for one lifetime, more than enough. There are younger people now, people who didn't grow up in the shadow of war. They'll lead humanity forward. I hope they do better than my generation did." He touched the wall one last time. "Rest easy, you did your duty. We did ours. The rest is up to those who come after." Admiral Cole left the memorial and returned to his ship. He did not look back. The dead did not need him anymore. The living did. Far away on a space station in neutral territory, a young female watched human ships arriving with supplies. The station housed thousands of refugees from the war, her people, survivors of the destruction. Her name was Era. She was 17 years old. She had lost her parents when the High Archon's defense fleet fired on their civilian transport. A human ship had pulled her family's escape pod to safety, but her parents' injuries were too severe. They died in a human medical bay, surrounded by enemies who tried desperately to save them. Era did not know what to think about humans. They had destroyed her world. They had killed her leaders. They had ended the empire that her people had built over 12,000 years. And they were feeding her, housing her, giving her medicine and education and a chance at a future. She watched the human relief workers unloading supplies. They worked alongside and volunteers, species that had been slaves under the hegemony, species that should have hated them with every fiber of their being. Instead, they helped. One of the human workers noticed her watching. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and gray hair just starting to show at his temples. He walked over with a friendly smile. "First time seeing the supply run?" he asked. Era nodded. She had been taught to fear humans, to hate them. They were supposed to be monsters who wanted only destruction. "I do not understand," she said finally. "You destroyed my empire, you killed our High Archon, you burned our—" "Yes," the human said. He did not try to deny it or make excuses. "Then why are you helping us? Why do you feed our children? Why do you give us medicine and shelter?" The human was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking carefully about his answer. "Your leaders chose war," he said finally. "Your people didn't, we know the difference." Era frowned. "But we are the enemy." "Your government was the enemy. Your military was the enemy. Your High Archon who decided to murder innocent people was the enemy." The human shrugged. "You're a kid. You didn't make those choices. Neither did most of the people on this station. So you do not hate us." The human thought about this. "Some humans do," he admitted. "After what happened to New Helsinki, there's a lot of anger, a lot of pain. That's going to take a long time to heal for both our peoples." He looked at her directly. "But hate doesn't help anyone rebuild. And that's what we're trying to do now. Rebuild. Create something better than what came before. Your empire was built on slavery and conquest. Maybe what comes next can be built on something else." "Like what?" "I don't know." The human smiled slightly. "Maybe we'll figure it out together." He went back to his work. Era watched him go. She thought about his words for a long time. Perhaps, she decided, there was something to learn from these humans after all. They were not what she had been taught. They were something more complicated. Something that could destroy an empire and then help its survivors. Something that could kill millions and then weep for the dead. They were confusing and contradictory, and impossible to understand. But they were also, maybe, worth getting to know. The galaxy was different now. The old order had burned away. The new order was still taking shape. No one knew exactly what the future would hold. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the future was not controlled by a single empire. It belonged to everyone, the strong and the weak, the old races and the new, the conquerors and the conquered. And at the center of it all, humanity stood ready, not as masters, not as rulers, just as another species among many trying to find their place in the stars. They had proven they could destroy. Now they hoped to prove they could build. Time would tell if they succeeded. But whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. Ambassador had warned them. Now everyone knew what that warning meant.